Hey guys, today I want to talk about a concept that is actually strangely new to me, and I called the video "You Are Not What You Do" because I want to talk about how so often we tie our beliefs about who we are to the things that we do and our activities, our jobs, the buckets we put ourselves in, the labels, and I just want to talk about separating yourself from that and what power that can give you. I've talked before about labels, but today I want to talk about identity. So what I want to talk about here is that identity is not fixed, meaning it's not static. I think sometimes it feels that way because our brains are catalogs of our experiences, and we feel safer in a world where everything and everyone comes with a user manual. But because people are dynamic and ever evolving, we have to make a huge effort to see the world in every nuanced shade of color instead of assigning people identities and holding them to what we think those identities are. And this ties into a few of the videos I've done before, definitely the stereotyping one. But in this video, I want to talk to you about just how we can grow by looking at our identity in a different way. So first, let's talk about what we do. I think we spend so much time and energy investing in what we do that we forget we are human beings first, and then what we're doing is really just a compilation of activities occupying our time. What you do is not who you are, it's the way you spend your energy, and that can change all the time. Let's talk first about jobs. So we here in America put such a huge emphasis on work. The reality is that we were educated, then we selected a specialization for whatever reason we did when we did, and then we put in copious amounts of time and effort investing in the mastery of that subject matter. And now, hopefully, we work in that space to earn an income for ourselves so that we can support ourselves living in the world. A job is something you do, it's something you know a lot about, it's a way you earn your living. It's not your DNA, it's not even a part of your core values. It's a role that you play and maybe have been playing for many years, but roles can shift as we grow. Let's take, for example, a job that has a very high likelihood of being tied to identity. Someone in the military, especially someone deployed, because their job literally consumes all of their free time. I have heard stories about how some people, after completing their military service, associate being a soldier or an officer so deeply with who they are that it's completely inextricable from their concepts of self or their identities. That makes it very difficult to see their value and their worth outside of the military. How would we alleviate this with any job really, or anything we do? I think there needs to be a conversation you have with yourself where you say, this is just a job. This is something that I do. It's a role that I play in the world, but I play many roles. And it's not necessarily the only or the most important or part of me. It's just something that I do or specialize in. And that gives you the ability to disconnect just enough to retain your sense of self if anything changes. What if you're a professional athlete and you get injured? What if your work requires your hands, you do any sort of craftsmanship, and then you get arthritis? What would you do? Do you feel worthless because your job is part of who you are? Or is it time for a new chapter? So these are the kinds of ideas I'm trying to plant. Sorry if I'm being indirect. So let's say that soldier or officer that is no longer in the military, instead of looking at themselves as broken or dysfunctional because they're not fulfilling that same role, if they shift it conceptually to say, that was my previous job and now I'm moving to a new job, I feel like that would help them on so many levels, because think of how, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder is treated in the military. If you're a soldier, all of the traumatic things that you're exposed to are part of the job description if you're in combat or you're on site and there's a war going on. But if you see yourself as a previous soldier that is now a human being, wouldn't you be more likely to seek help? Emotional, mental help? Wouldn't you be more likely to use resources at the VA if you see yourself as a human seeking healing? But if you see yourself as a soldier and that is your identity, you're more likely to discount your own feelings because you're not in tune with what you're feeling and you're just kind of telling yourself how you should feel based on your job description. And that's why we have to remember, no matter what job, no matter how important your job is, you are a human being first, and knowing that will help you tend to your needs as they come up and be really connected to yourself. If you are let go from any job, imagine the fallout if your job title and your identity are one and the same. And when you realize how serious that would be, start separating the two a little bit for your own sake. So it's not even just jobs. We allow the things we do to really consume us, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I did that over the years. So for me, I made my identity the way that people pretty much universally described me as a very smart girl. Unsurprisingly, I did very well in school. I kind of walked around as a living report card because that was my value added. That's what I had internalized as my identity. It was to the point that I got extremely anxious. I would feel my body temperature go up. I would feel my heart skip if someone asked me a question and I didn't know the answer. Okay, just because you feel like something is true about you or you are something, it might be true about you, but it's not your identity. I'm not actually Google, even if I'm affectionately called it. There's way more things that I don't know than things I do know, and it will be that way until the day I die. That's the nature of information. But I had taken on this identity so seriously that I let it hurt my self-esteem. If I got an A- on a test, that wasn't just an exam, that was proof that I was failing who I am, and it cut me deeper because it was linked to my sense of identity. Because I felt that my worth was tied to knowing as much information as possible, I put being a good student before my basic mental, emotional, and physiological needs. I think this example really demonstrates how taking on a job or a role as your whole identity can cause you to neglect so many core aspects of your soul. Because you put so much worth on this role, you literally go into survival mode and you get kind of desperate when you feel anything might undermine that role or get in your way. And that's because you don't know who you are without it. And that's a problem. Putting jobs and roles into perspective as just something you do depersonalizes them in a way that gives us our power back and allows us to better care for ourselves. It also allows us to be open to taking on new roles and to notice if we lose interest or outgrow the previous role. Next, I want to talk about hobbies. Because many hobbies can take on the same quality for people. People who define themselves as athletes feel intensely depressed and devastated when they're injured because the injury is not just to their body, but the injury is also undermining their concept of who they are. And that stress actually makes it harder to heal, as you might imagine. Some people call themselves gamers, some people call themselves foodies, some people identify so strongly with their political beliefs that their political affiliation becomes a core component of who they think they are, even though their political engagement is limited to voting once in a federal election every 4 years and posting their views on Instagram and Facebook. Clinging to labels makes us more divisive, and that's a perfect segue into talking about not just what we do, but how who we are is perceived socially by others. Who we are. First, let's talk about ethnicity. So being of mixed ethnicity, I think this one has really stressed me out over the years because I don't cleanly fit into any bucket that people would like to put me in. Growing up in the US, at least as was my experience, everyone in their insecure youth conforms to the dominant white culture to some extent. And either that's comfortable for them because they're part of it, or it's a little uncomfortable because they're outsider, but they're conforming to what they think is the ideal. As we get older, many of us identify more with our roots and migrate more toward what is consistent with our ethnicity or our cultural heritage. For me, that happened when I moved to DC and befriended more people with Middle Eastern backgrounds. So now that I have so many Middle Eastern people in my circles, I find that people who were raised in the Middle East generally have values that don't exactly align with my own because their values are a little too traditional or not progressive enough for me, socially and politically, especially socially. And the people from my hometown were maybe too westernized that I didn't really feel 1,000% like I fit in. So because I am mixed, I feel like an outsider to Middle Eastern people and an outsider to American people. And I don't think that will ever change. So I just get to be on my own island, but this helps me see how ethnicity really is just another label Honestly, not fitting into any one clean ethnic category gives me a sort of liberation to determine who I am, because no one can really decide for me. And what that makes me realize is no one should have to go through that. Just because you belong to a specific ethnic group does not mean you need to conform to their norms. It does not mean you need to share their values, does not mean you need to share their political affiliation. I just want you to start paying attention and tuning into your feelings so that you can make sure wherever you are, you feel safe to identify with what makes your heart and mind the happiest. Another category I feel really determines people's identity is their socioeconomic status or where they're from. And I don't want to get too much into that, but think about when you meet a person and you get a vibe from them. And then you go in the car with people who already knew them and they tell you background. And they're like, oh, they're from here, they make this kind of money, whatever. And it's like, did that taint how you felt when you met them? Did that change anything? I think for everyone it does, but shouldn't. Because I think that vibe, that feeling you get when you meet someone is the more important thing than whether or not they graduated from college or whatever. I think the most important thing is that gut feeling, how you relate to someone. And we need to stop obsessing over labels like these. But they're not just being imposed on us. I think at times we cling to our social identities because they give us a comfortable sense of belonging. And if you feel truly fulfilled, then ignore this piece of advice. But I think the only way to really know and to fulfill what your soul really craves is to, again, tune into your feelings and allow the way you feel to help you gravitate toward the activities, the people, the spaces, etc., that make you feel the most at peace. Pay attention to how you feel after you leave. How did hanging out with those people change your mood? Did it lift you up? Did it drag you down? Does it normally lift you up, but today it dragged you down? Because that's okay, people go through things. But chronically, how do you feel in these situations? Are they good for you? Do you need to branch out? And you'll only know if you tune in. I want you to know what I'm just realizing, which is that we can ruthlessly edit our lives. And the best, most liberating news is that we don't need anyone's permission to do it. If ever we feel like the people around us are inhibiting our growth or imposing their values that we don't share upon us, kindly insert boundary. I have a video on boundaries, check it out. And let them know that this part of your journey is not open to their commentary, or you prefer to do this thing by yourself and you love them, and cool, move past it. Even the most well-meaning individuals need to hear that sometimes. For example, if you're tired of your job, but your mom or your cousin or the person you play cards with on Tuesday nights isn't down with it, just politely remind this person that this is your journey. Or even better, keep your next move to yourself. And by doing that, you can operate without anyone's impositions on your freedom or your right to choose. Also, do yourself a favor and take notice of the people who consistently oppose your growth and progress. The people who love you should unconditionally support you. Remember that. So here's my closing call to action. I want you to take a step back, maybe look at yourself in the mirror, but don't look at yourself, look into your eyes and ask yourself, who are you? Who am I? A few years ago, I would have answered with my job title. You know, there's a lot of people who do my job, and when I'm done with this job, someone else is gonna do it like I was never there, and you can do the best you can, but it's not who you are. So now I got rid of that answer, and I answer, who am I? With, who am I? I am a kind, compassionate, energetic, loving human being who loves to learn and relate to people. So I want you to answer the question yourself. And the answer should only contain your job title, your ethnicity, or your hobbies if the question specifically asked for that. In this case, it didn't. So in this case, those are just details that you can add, cut, paste, edit, remove, delete, move to trash forever, or just leave out when they're not meeting your needs. Please let me know the answer to the question who you are in the comments below, or DM me at Yael Bahar on Instagram and we can talk about it. And if you don't want to talk about it, talk to yourself, but just get a conversation going. And if you like this video and want to see more videos like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I put in so much effort to these and it really means a lot to me. And as always, there is so much more talk to come soon. Bye for now.